By now, just about everyone has heard of the emerald ash borer and the dire threat it poses to ash trees not only here in Vermont, but everywhere else it's been located, which as of a recent count includes more than 35 states, mostly in the eastern half of the U.S., but extending as far west as Colorado, and also in several Canadian provinces. Native to Asia, they are beetles that were first discovered in the U.S. in southeastern Michigan near Detroit in the summer of 2002. The adult beetles nibble on ash foliage but cause little damage. It's their larvae that are the problem. The larvae, or immature stage of the beetle's development, feed on the inner bark of ash trees, disrupting the tree's ability to transport water and nutrients. It's believed they arrived in the United States on solid wood packing material carried in cargo ships or airplanes, originating in its native Asia. The impact of the emerald ash borer may well be enormous. It's been found recently in Londonderry, and it will be costly to cut down the infected trees. Green Mountain Power, the state's largest electric utility, is faced with having to cut down large numbers of ash trees along its power line routes, as infested ash trees can pose a safety and reliability issue. Regulators have approved GMP's emerald ash borer mitigation plan, and they expect to spend about $1.2 million in 2020 to address these safety and reliability concerns. A special charge for this mitigation is already appearing on electric bills. So we journeyed up to Merck Forest in Rupert, where we talked with Tim Duclos, the conservation manager there, about what to do if an ash tree or trees on your property is discovered to be infected. Yeah, well, so just to get us started here, how does the emerald ash borer infect a tree? Is it sort of attach itself to the bark and drill its way in, or what goes on?
Yeah, so the adults will basically nibble on the leaves and travel around the exterior of the tree. After they breed, they will deposit their larvae on the bark and the crevices of the bark, which will then, throughout the summer, kind of permeate into the bark, bore into the bark, in which case they overwinter as larvae within the tree, really causing true damage to the tree as they feed in that cambium layer. Beyond that, after their first winter, they'll emerge in the spring and then throughout the summer, and they'll repeat that cycle as adults, breeding and depositing their larvae and infecting the trees and spreading from there.
And how long does it take it before the tree is effectively dead or needs to be taken down, or it doesn't happen immediately?
No, it depends on the size of the tree, but evidence suggests that a small young tree can be infected and die within a year, and older trees will succumb within 4 or 5 years.
So once a tree is infected with the larva, it's a goner, I guess. There's no way to save it.
No, you can treat a tree with individual trees with insecticide. However, once a tree is infected, it's pretty much a losing battle.
So is it an option just to leave a tree, even though it's been affected and it's dead or dying, and not cut it down, or should all trees that are infected with the emerald ash borer, do they have to be cut down?
It depends on your objectives. I know, just speaking for Merck Forest, for example, if we do find ourselves infected and inundated with emerald ash borer, we would want to cut trees down that pose a hazard to people. So, across our trail network or within a certain proximity of our cabins, we would think very seriously about cutting trees so as to prevent any potential harm to people. However, from an ecological point of view, a standing dead tree, a snag as we would call it, is beneficial to wildlife. Insectivorous birds, for example, or cavity nesting birds or small animals perhaps would benefit from standing dead trees and ash, so leave it up.
And if a tree is cut down, an ash tree is cut down, it's still usable for firewood and other purposes?
Yeah, so the physical damage to the tree is contained within that cambium layer, so the bark. So the actual saw value of the tree is maintained as long as it's harvested within a reasonable period of mortality. Otherwise, you get rot or any other defects that you would expect from a standing dead tree. So there is salvage potential early on for a standing dead tree. However, your products would have to be treated on site, or at least processed and consumed on site. It's not such that you essentially wouldn't want to spread it, so it would have to be kept within the quarantine zone or sent to a sawmill that is prepared to treat it accordingly, so as to prevent the further spread of the emerald ash borer.
So, it sounds like this whole situation is fairly dire, and the future of ash trees, at least around here, is kind of bleak, I guess. Is it basically, is the sense of the forestry folks that this is just inevitable, it's going to spread throughout the state and claim the overwhelming percentage of ash trees?
Yeah, it's assumed and expected that it's going to spread throughout Vermont. 5% of our forests here in Vermont are ash, and so once it becomes established, it is impossible to eradicate.
With winter well on its way, news on the ash borer front may be quiet for a little while, but the costs of eradicating the trees will not go away. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.